So, okay, 2020, I feel, was a really, really, and everyone that's watching, please put your favorite and least favorite movies in the chat, and I will get to those. I've put my favorite and least favorite in the description of this video, so you should be able to see it down there, and you can follow along through there. But I felt like 2020, obviously, rough year for movies. We didn't get a ton of great ones. Last year, I really thought last year the best thing that we got was Bad Education, and that one wasn't. That was good, but I felt like we really lagged a lot in terms of getting quality stuff in 2020. 2021, I think, came back strong. It took a while there to pick up the pace in terms of the content, but we got it back. Netflix has been killing it. Apple's been killing it a bit. Warner Brothers, everyone's back. So, again, put your favorite movies in the chat on the side. I apologize for the buffering. I can see we're going through some buffering right now. But, okay, we'll start off, I think, with the worst of 2021. Okay, so starting from the top, I'll just list them all. You can see in the description what I have, and then we can go back through, and I'll give a little blurb for each one. So, French Dispatch at number 10 for me, and then it goes John and the Hole, Antlers, The Many Saints of Newark, Space Jam, A New Legacy, Old, Cherry, Red Rocket, Don't Look Up, and then Matrix Resurrections. Okay, I don't know. Okay, yeah, I'll go through each one now, and then I'll give a little bit of a blurb as to how I felt about each one. So with French Dispatch, I've been a fan of Wes Anderson for a really, really long time, but this one felt just so clerical. I didn't feel like there was anything interesting that he brought to the table in terms of how his style has normally been, or I just didn't feel like it had anything new, and I was tempted to go back and see it a second time, but I really could not bring myself to do it. There are 4 short stories that happen, and I feel like the danger in that is that you're not going to get a great story every single time. So, and each one is not even that interesting to hold interest throughout the 20 minutes, 25 minutes that it's on screen. So each time there are like 4 sections throughout the entire movie where you feel like, well, I'll suffer through this right now, but that's the thing. You keep getting that, that ping in a movie wherever you just keep getting that, like, okay, how much longer do we have on this? I just don't want to get that whenever I'm watching a Wes Anderson movie, and that happened again and again and again, and that was unfortunate. And then John and the Hole, much more of an art house movie on this one, but I was very interested. I heard a lot of reviews were comparing it to Michael Haneke's work. I love his work, and on this one, I liked the concept of what was going on. I thought it was somewhat admirable in the way that they were going about doing it. Creepy idea, creepy setup, but it ended up being pointless in the end for me. I felt like they had such an interesting setup, and they didn't go anywhere with it. There is an interesting setup that they have between a mother and a daughter who's kind of telling the story that we're watching. And I didn't get anything from that movie. I feel like stylistically there's some interesting stuff going on. I like the camera work in it. I'd say this is a director we should probably keep our eye on. But overall, I was kind of let down, and I was very much looking forward to that movie, but I felt like it left me very empty. And then next after that is Antlers, which this one I would say much more of just a disappointment than a full-on bad movie. Guillermo del Toro producing. I love Scott Cooper, the director. And as far as this one, it also felt like they didn't know the type of movie that they were trying to make. It feels like the movie's kind of fighting between whether it wants to be a very realistic story, a realistic monster, or if it wants to go the route of being a very kind of fantastical type of thing that Guillermo del Toro normally does. And I'm not saying that it has to stay true to Guillermo del Toro's vision. I'm not saying you have to go with Scott Cooper's vision that is always more realistic. I'm saying that the movie itself feels like it's fighting with fantastical and something more real. Like, it felt kind of like it was trying to do what Alien did, but just didn't do it anywhere near as well as that movie did. It didn't know what it was actually going for. And I also feel like the movie was a bit too short. By the time you get to the ending, it just feels kind of like you're a little lost. Like, wait, is that where we're stopping here? I don't think that's the right way to go with this. I felt a little, leaving the theater was like, meh, admirable, but very, very disappointing. Then after that is The Many Saints of Newark at number 7. I love The Sopranos, okay? And going into this one, I would say leaving the theater, I was happy to see certain characters return. I was happy to see certain characters created as this prequel was done. I think some of that was done very well. But as the days went by, I felt a little frustrated with how this movie kind of, and I hope this doesn't happen throughout, the next few years in Hollywood, is they kind of make these prequels or sequels of these legendary stories, and they go about it in a way that takes all of the mystery out of what made that work great in the first place. And I felt watching this one that it would probably need to work for an audience that doesn't know anything about The Sopranos. It also should build on the original story instead of kind of knock away at it a bit. I don't think it is absolutely detrimental. I don't think it hurts The Sopranos, but that's kind of the best I could say about it. I did not like that it chipped away at the story of Moltisanti, because in the show, the charm of that character is that you know nothing about him, and I didn't need to know anything else about him. So I wasn't a huge fan of the way that they went about doing that, so that's why it's number 7 on worst of the year. And then after that, I would say these top movies are a little bit more disappointing. The last 5 are really, I think, going to be full-on bad. But it kind of starts getting bad at Space Jam: A New Legacy. They've been working on this movie, it seems, for a long, long time. And I was very disappointed in... and I went back and watched the original Space Jam before seeing this movie, because I understand that there is a level of... that movie... when it came out, I was the target audience for whenever that movie came out, and I had a lot of love for that movie whenever it was out. But going back to it, you can definitely tell that it's not awesome, and that's okay. But this movie does not have any charm in it whatsoever. It doesn't seem to know why it exists. It doesn't seem to be trying to attract any young audience at all. It does that weird thing where, it's a kid's movie that throws in these adult references, and that doesn't really make any sense whatsoever. And it just so much of the movie is fighting with itself. And it's, I think, one of the saddest things to watch a movie that feels like it does not know why it exists. And I really think that Space Jam has no idea why it exists, which is, it is what it is. But it's just, it's unfortunate. Then number 5 is Old. I went into Old really, really wanting to like this. I really love... I love M. Night Shyamalan. I feel like even with his worst movies, you're still getting a lot of enjoyment. You're still getting a lot of fun out of the types of ways that he's working, the types of things that he's doing. And this, even with things like After Earth, you can kind of see what it is that he's doing, even if it's not great, even if it's actively very, very terrible. But on this one, it really felt like they're not even so much lost the plot. It felt like there was no plot to speak of at all. And even that, the dialogue in his movies is getting worse and worse. And the twists are seeming more kind of like an assignment that he expects that he has to pull off more than anything else, which is annoying. And this one really felt like trying to push a boulder up a hill as a viewer. I did not want to leave. I hate the idea of leaving a theater, but this one came very close because I was so bored. And I don't remember exactly how long this movie even was. I think it was like an hour 40, but it felt like it kept going on forever and ever. And I didn't even care that the movie had plot holes. Like, I'm not really that worried about movies having plot holes. That I'm fine with that, but this one was really, really testing my patience more than M. Night Shyamalan normally does. And I feel like you can normally find great stuff in the worst M. Night Shyamalan movie, but this one, just impossible. Absolutely impossible. And we are getting a little bit of buffering. If you are watching right now, I apologize for that. Please, I'll ask, just suffer through it this week. Next week, I'm most definitely going to make sure that is fixed and taken care of. And then number 4 is Cherry. On these, I absolutely hated these 4 movies. I thought they were absolutely terrible. Cherry is, I think, an incredibly cynical movie. I think it's perfectly okay. There are movies out there, they don't know why they exist, and that is a shame. But Cherry, in particular, I think it's an exploitative story about a very serious subject matter, and it felt like there were some filmmakers that had no idea what they were doing with the territory. They did some stuff that was rather stylish. This was one of those few movies where I very actively did not like it. I thought it was a very, very terrible time. It felt like they didn't care that it was a terrible time. It felt like they didn't care that they didn't know what they were doing. And it just, I don't know. I hate whenever people say that a movie feels irresponsible. This one felt pretentious. It felt very, very pretentious. And I hate feeling like a movie knows that it's pretentious and does not care. And then number 3 was Red Rocket, the new is it Sean Bean? I think I'm saying that correctly. The new Sean Bean movie. And I've really enjoyed Sean Bean's last movies. This one, Sean Bean has always had, I felt, in Florida Project, in Tangerine, always done a very good job at getting very naturalistic performances from very fringe-type characters you would never really run into, and that's kind of the exciting thing about it. On this one, and kind of humanizing unlikable characters. I hated the character in this movie, found them obnoxious and annoying throughout the entire thing. I did not think that there was anything stylistically going on in the movie that was interesting in any real way. And also, I would say in this one, this was the first time in his movies where I felt like he actively disliked the characters in his own movie. And I felt like there was more preachiness on the side of how he talked about the characters than anything else. I just didn't have a good time during the movie at all. It felt like the filmmaker didn't know what type of time he wanted people to have. And again, it just kind of felt the same type of slightly cynical. And I just, that feels like it is actively working against what a movie is actually trying to do. Or I would think it goes against what I think a movie should try and do with an audience. That just feels preachy to me, and I hate that. Again, in terms of being preachy and not actually trying to entertain anyone anyway, was Don't Look Up, the number 2 worst movie of the year, actively unfunny. Felt like nobody cared at all about being funny in any sort of way, and that made this one feel even more pretentious than any of the other movies that we were dealing with. It literally felt like, and let me just say this, I don't care if I agree with the message the movie is trying to say. I would rather a movie not have any message that's trying to shove down people's throats. I would rather a really good story, because if you want anyone to reach any type of conclusion about anything, it's going to be through a good story. And Don't Look Up does not have much of a story at all. Don't Look Up just has a log line of, and I hate to say it goes full political. And I don't care if I agree with some of the stuff that it's saying politically. That's not fun. It's boring. It makes it impossible to talk about the movie in any meaningful way. And also, it's just a comedy that isn't funny. Adam McKay, I think, has a style. He kind of has this kind of like what Paul Thomas Anderson was doing at the start of his career. It's vintage and energetic, kind of like Goodfellas, but that's all he has. I would rather, maybe someone needs to give him a really good script and then just leave him alone, because this doesn't, the Don't Look Up Vice type of thing doesn't work. It's alienating. It's bad storytelling. I respect some of the style of stuff that's going on in there, but overall, I absolutely hate it. And then number 1, worst movie of the year, Matrix Resurrections. There's been a lot of talk that I've seen about people saying that what this movie is doing, hey Mike, good to see you in here. We're having a little bit of trouble with buffering, so bear with me there. We're going to get it fixed if the frames drop or anything, but please do leave all movies that you liked or hated this year. We're talking about Matrix was my least favorite movie of the year. A lot of people online I have seen talk about how this movie is the type of movie, kind of like The Last Jedi, that talks about media, it talks about corporations, it talks about humanity in an updated way that The Matrix should. I feel like a lot of people are focusing in on it's updating The Matrix in a good way. And I, honestly, everything that's about updating The Matrix I thought was clever and fine, but this was just the ultimate disappointment. I think more than anything else, the thing that made The Matrix so strong was working with the ideas of good and evil, but doing so in a way that was still very nuanced in talking about modern life. I'm not so interested in the exact, transformations of, that was made in the late 90s and this one is made in the early 2020s, so how is it different? Like, that stuff I don't think is anywhere near as interesting. In the original movie, everyone is fighting for something that is very admirable on both sides. You can see why it is that the machines are doing what they're doing, and they actually have something that makes sense. Obviously, if you're a human, you're going to be screwed, so you don't want to go with that. And then on the human side, it makes a wonderful case. Both sides make wonderful cases for what is it they want. In this one, not only does no one make a good case for why it is they want what they want, it's almost impossible to tell what anyone wants in this movie. Everyone is kind of walking around and acting like they, want something, the stakes are so low. That's probably the best way to say it. The stakes are embarrassingly low in this movie, and I think that was the saddest part about Matrix. If you have not seen Matrix, on Wednesday, I'm going to start doing live streams for the reviews. So join on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time and bring your thoughts about Matrix, kind of what you think about it, and we'll go from there. So those are my thoughts on the those are the worst movies of the year. And I'll go through some of the comments now and see what it is that people are saying. Oh, yes, I'll put... Sorry about the buffering. Okay. So, what some people are saying is my favorite movie was Belfast and Dune. My worst movies were Home Alone and music featuring Kate Hudson. My honorable mention is Pig. Okay, that is very interesting. I have actually not seen Pig. I really need to see Pig. I saw Belfast recently. That is one of my honorable mentions. I definitely have Dune in mind. Dune is awesome. Then let's see, what else? 9 Days was a great 2020 movie that got released this year and got swept under the rug by the lockdowns. Okay, well, I'm seeing that we have nothing right now in the chat, so I might re-upload the recording of this anyway. Sorry to everyone. If everyone is seeing things now, I'm going to go ahead and... Let's see. All right. If you can hear me, I'm going to go ahead and re-upload the recording of this later, so you'll be able to go through and hear what everything is being dissected. Mike McCormick says, my guess is you are about 23 years old. I am 51. I don't have your enthusiasm like you, but I did when I was your age. Oh, I'm actually turning 26 in a few days. But thank you very much, Mike. It's good to have you on the stream, even if it is buffering a lot. Okay. The honorable mentions that I have going through the best of the year is the honorable mentions are Licorice Pizza. Licorice Pizza, for me, did not make it into the best of the year. And then Belfast and Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar. It was very tough for me to not put Barb and Star in there because I feel like if a movie makes you, laugh at least 6 times, honest laughs, then you need to give it its due, and that one did more than 6. I loved Belfast, honestly. Just something about it, it didn't quite stick in a way that made me want to go back and revisit it again in a way that anything that's in my top 10 would. And then it was the same for Licorice Pizza. I really respect those movies, but I didn't have so much of a love for those movies that I feel like I need to go and revisit them very soon. I'm just putting in the chat here that I'll repost the recording because of the buffering. Thank you for everyone that has been sticking with everything that has been going on with all of the buffering. So then going through the best of 2021. At the top is Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, I've only seen this movie once. I really, really want to go back and see it again. It's a very fun experience, and this one more than anything else, while I think the movie is very good, I think it's a solid story, I think it's one of the better Marvel movies, I really appreciated it being able to see a movie that got everyone in the theater excited about the experience. We've been through a very, very rough 2 years where everyone is incredibly isolated and no one is able to do that in any way. It's been very tough to get people back into the theaters, and I think this is the first movie to actually do it. I was very happy to finally be somewhere where that was the atmosphere that everyone was in, and I just appreciate the movie for creating that. That is not everything that I think is good about the movie, but it's enough. It's enough, I would say. Then after that is The Beta Test, the new movie by Jim Cummings. Jim Cummings is an independent filmmaker, rising through the ranks as someone who's kind of doing a DIY type of filmmaking. The Beta Test is it's a very energetic movie, the type of movie. It felt kind of like if Eyes Wide Shut were to meet Uncut Gems. It's kind of like it's a Alice in Wonderland type of going down the rabbit hole of dark and mysterious things, but it's got that kind of Eyes Wide Shut. There's like an eroticism about it, and talks about marriage a lot. It does all of that in a very, very interesting way. I would say there are messages in there kind of to tie it to Don't Look Up. There are messages in there that come from just a story as opposed to them shoving it down your throat, which is just so annoying. I hated Don't Look Up. I really hated it. Okay. And then The Card Counter, the new movie from Paul Schrader. I love Paul Schrader as a filmmaker. First Reformed was like top 2, the movie that came out. That movie was so good. I'm very happy that he is making movies that are more in line with kind of, I think, his best, which is the lonely man that is kind of trying to find their own path. I think all his movies are about that in a way, but the ones that are really good, I think, are the ones that that unapologetically dive all the way in and do that type of thing. Mike McCormick, have you ever thought about making your own movie? I am going to make my own movie one day. That is most definitely going to happen. Yes, I have thought about that. I have definitely thought about that. Then after that is Drive My Car. Drive My Car was actually one of the weirder movies. Whenever I went to go see it, I saw that it was going to be a 3-hour movie. I did not know that at the time. I almost turned around, did not see it, and I was so happy that I stuck around. It is a very strange type of movie in that it is 3 hours, but it's not 3 hours in that you have tons and tons of scene that's throwing tons and tons of information at you. It is almost like an hour and 45-minute movie, but they are manipulating time and spending so much time on individual moments that it feels much more like you are peering into actual situations that are happening. And those situations that you're put in, people are making themselves very, very vulnerable, talking about very serious and emotional things in a way that feels very honest. And the combination of doing those two things, I thought, gave a very magical feel about it, and it also made the movie go by very, very quickly. Didn't feel like 3 hours at all. I feel like if you're not used to that, you might need to stick with it for a bit, kind of be a little patient with it, but it's very, very interesting. Yes, Beta Fett, I'll speak to Macbeth. I did see it. I have not seen Memoria yet, so I will probably need to update what's going on with the list if I end up liking Memoria more than I did Macbeth. Then number 6 is Nightmare Alley. I've seen Nightmare Alley twice now, and I feel like I connected with Nightmare Alley because it has got a much more traditional type of storytelling. And by that, I mean that I feel like a lot of movies, are constantly trying to reinvent the wheel all the time. But this one has an understanding about human nature that I feel like most movies don't try to connect to. It feels like I kept thinking that it just kind of sticks to very traditional values, and that seems like a terrible way to say that, but it understands that every single person has just a brutal monster inside, and you have to work very, very hard to not let it fall out of you. And the way that it does it is just a type of storytelling that feels like classical storytelling. It's not trying to shove a message down your throat in any way at all, but you can feel that it's actually about something, and it's about something that is very, very human. I feel like it would fit across any type of culture. It could relate to anyone, but it does it in a stylish way. It does it kind of with the noir tropes, some horror tropes, but it's not a horror movie. It is more of a noir movie. But it does that. It rides this horror line very, very well. And Mike, I see that you mentioned the original. I have not seen the original. I have not read the book. I'm excited to watch the original. I'm excited that there is an original. But on this one, it felt wholly original. I really hope Guillermo del Toro gets some nominations. I feel like that would be incredible. I feel like he deserves it for this way more than Shape of Water. I did not like Shape of Water very much at all. And then the top 5, I have No Time to Die, The Power of the Dog, Dune, The Last Duel, and The Green Knight. So looking to the comments for what a few people are saying, Mike says, I saw Dune and was unimpressed. I understand that a lot of people are saying that same thing about Dune. It is definitely not for everyone, especially if you're not into sci-fi. It's very heavy on the sci-fi. I've even seen a few people that said that some people that aren't a fan of war movies haven't liked it, and that makes a lot of sense too, because that's very, very heavy on that. Betafet, did you see Macbeth or Memoria? I have not seen Memoria yet, but I did see Macbeth. I don't know how I feel about Macbeth. I'm going to do a review about it. It was very strange in a good way, but it did not connect with me. I honestly did not feel that poisonous rage that is in that story, but it was beautiful. It was shockingly beautiful. I loved that. Going on Lakeland Title, I'll help you get investors to fund it, and I can do some of the legal work. There you go. That would be perfect. I'll definitely, yes. Let's get something going. All right, I'll pull out a script and yeah, we can start a GoFundMe or something like that. Then let's see, Mike. I think of sci-fi plots a lot. Okay, that's very interesting. What's your favorite sci-fi movie, Mike? I'd be interested. I love sci-fi too. I'm very. But what was it about Dune? I'd be interested to hear what it was about Dune that you weren't a fan of. So then the final 5 movies are, like I said, No Time to Die, Power of the Dog, Dune, The Last Duel, and The Green Knight. So with No Time to Die, honestly, I'm just a huge Bond fan. I was thrilled that this pulled it off. I was happy that, I think we all know that Daniel Craig said that he, is finally done with Bond. He doesn't want to do it anymore. This one, I thought, did a good job of wrapping up his arc and pretty much saying, hey, it's time for a new James Bond. I thought that was very good. But then the regular things you want from Bond, I thought it did a great job on everything that you normally need from a James Bond movie. It was very successful, and I just very much like that series, and the fact that it pulled it off put it very, very high on the list for me. And then The Power of the Dog. There are 3 movies between, it was 2007, that No Country for Old Men, There Will Be Blood, and Assassination of Jesse James came out. There's something very, I don't know what it is, just the old West power hungry type of personality that I find very interesting as a storyline and also as characters. The Power of the Dog has that. The way that it, oh, well, I think the stream just finished. Okay, well, hold on just a second. I will repost this. Looks like YouTube killed. I'll record and post the full thing soon. All right. So, looks like they killed the stream, so I'm going to go ahead and just continue recording on my own, and then I'll post it up later for everyone to see. Okay. So, we're talking about Power of the Dog. Yeah, those 3 movies, there's something about the character, there's something about the time setting of 1900s, early 1900s, the kind of power-hungry character, and then in the setting of the Old West. Power of the Dog has that. It tells that story, but it bends it in a way that can't recall happening before. The performances are stellar, and I would say this is the type of movie that I don't want to say too much about it. Watch it. It is so worth your time. And then, yeah, the top 3. Dune, Last Duel, and The Green Knight. Dune is the first type of movie, I feel, since Lord of the Rings that went out on a limb, told a gargantuan story in a way that was fully its own, feels like it is not regurgitating any type of media before it, is actively trying to create something magnificent, and I think takes a great step forward. And again, this is one, I feel like they're eventually going to put this back in theaters. Go and see it. Any chance you have to see this movie, please go and see it on the biggest screen possible. I've seen it twice now and saw it once in theaters, once at home. Both times still absolutely incredible, like powerful storytelling and properly epic. And it was there was a conversation between Villeneuve and James Cameron recently, and James Cameron, I thought, made a wonderful point saying that Marvel movies have epic situations all the time, but there's nothing in them that feels truly epic. And Dune does, like Lawrence of Arabia, have this immense scope that is utterly beautiful and just so powerful. Very worth seeing, whether at home or in the theater, but just catch it if you can. And then last 2. Second is The Last Duel. Second from the end is The Last Duel. This is, in terms of structure, this was the most interesting, I thought. I love the types of storytelling where you're watching things. I guess I should say, The Last Duel is about it's about an accusation of rape that took place in the 1300s between members of very high society in France. And so it's kind of looking at who is correct in this. Is the person being accused correct? Is the husband correct? Or is the woman correct? And what the movie does is it shows you each person's perspective as to all the events leading up to this moment, and then it shows you the last duel that is the result of it. The thing that made me love this movie so much was that through the structure of that, kind of like Rashomon, showing the power of cinema the way that a glance, a laugh, a conversation, tone totally shifts everything that is perceived in a movie. The way that a scene works with you, and the story that's being told is so powerful. The way that it tells its story more than anything else, I was fascinated by, and that's why it was number 2 on this list. And then finally, The Green Knight. I really, there was something, this movie, I feel this movie is very special. I've not been huge into kind of medieval time periods. I was into the Green Knight story whenever I was younger. I like King Arthur stories. But in terms of movies, that was never something that I was fully into. This movie, in one way, in terms of the technical side, I felt like it was able to recreate the feeling of what it's like to read kind of the old English stories if you're able to kind of work out a little bit of it. It's got the magic that you can feel is in a story that has existed for the centuries that this story has. It brings that with it in a way that's so powerful. But more than anything else, and this kind of connects to Nightmare Alley, the way that it tells its story, it goes to, I would say, the 70% line, and you have to actively work to fill in the blanks yourself for what the remaining 30% of the movie means. You have to engage with the movie, and you have to you have to enjoy working with what the movie is trying to say. And it's the type of thing where it's like there are no right, no wrong answers. I've seen a few reviews that I feel like they got frustrated because the 30% they had to fill in they didn't like. It's a story about honor. It's a story about character, and instead of like the worst movies on this list, Cherry, Red Rocket, Don't Look Up, they're movies that really want you to sit down and listen to what they have to tell you. The ones that are at the top of the list for me are the ones that say, hey, here is 30, 50, 70% of the story. You're going to have to actively work to dig into yourself and find what it is that it means to you. You have to kind of bring the story to the finish line. And I love movies that do that. Green Knight did that better than any other. So to close this out, I want to also say, yes, Peter Bogdanovich passed away, which is very sad. Kind of ushered in the golden age of movies in the 70s. And that's very sad to see him go. Also a film historian, really, really inspiring voice. Thank you, everyone that was watching, everyone that was on the stream. I apologize that, it ended up shutting down, but it's back up now. We went ahead and put the recording up. And everyone else that is coming along, please do subscribe for any future updates on reviews and movie news.